we're in the garage today. We're going to be installing the K-suspension battery cables on my 99 XJ. It's a cool 26 degrees out in an uninsulated shop. So I don't know how long it's going to take me to do this or if I'll do it all tonight. But anyway, what prompted this was my battery connections. Look at those. I know my engine bay is not clean by any means, but I have a lot of nice parts on this Jeep. I put in a fancy battery, and this just isn't cutting it. The wires are starting to get corroded, and they're just small gauge. So I decided to go ahead and get new battery connections. And I actually didn't order them from K-Suspension. I got them off of Amazon. And after they got here, I decided if I'm going to be altering that stuff, I might as well do the battery cables at the same time. So this is what I went with from Amazon. These are the same style that K-Suspension sells, but this brand is HGN-BGS. And it came with all this extra stuff. You know, these little felt things for underneath the connections, some copper lugs, some heat shrink. And the idea was that I would put my own copper lugs on the factory cables and install them and be fine. But I decided to go ahead and upgrade my battery cables at the same time. Go ahead and check out K-Suspension's website. He has a lot of good information on why it's a good idea to do this. One just being age. You saw my cables. They're starting to get old. And then also this is 2-gauge welding wire. So it's a lot more heavy duty. It's going to allow a lot more current to go through. So in the future, when I install a 136 amp alternator for all my accessories like the winch and the lights and all that stuff, which I have experienced the need for that while winching and it drawing down my volts. So anyway, I'm going to upgrade that in the future. These wires will allow for that. He also sends you a new A&L fuse and a nice fuse holder. This is the bag it came in. Just came right through USPS, right to the mailbox. And the really cool thing was it only took them 3.5 days to get these to me. I ordered them on a lunch break, and by the weekend they were on my doorstep. So pretty cool. And you can tell that he really cares about what he's doing. If you look at all these, they are tin plated copper lugs. And then he uses a special heat shrink with a special type of glue in there. I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but you can see the glue sticking out. That's going to keep corrosion from getting in there. And that's also the point of the tin plating. So you get all sorts of battery wires. You get the legend with all the color coding for where each end goes. And it's nice because he's gone through and made sure that you're getting, you know, the right size lug. Look at the difference in hole size there. You're getting the right size lug for each application, so you don't have to worry about doing that. Instructions, fuse holder, spare fuse, cool sticker. I mean, what more can you ask for? He's obviously done a really good job setting this kit up. The only thing I have a complaint about is these stickers. Maybe just because it's so cold out, but like this one's missing it because it fell off. I think a good upgrade or idea for K-Suspension, instead of using these stickers, would be to use some of these paint markers. Then you just put the paint mark on there. You know, you can get these in all sorts of colors. Let that dry, and then that's not going to come off like these stickers. But anyway, if you are missing some stickers, he makes it pretty easy to figure out where everything goes. Not only does he have an install video, but if you check out his website, which I'm pulling up right now, you can see he has a list of where all the wires go, and you can kind of, you know, troubleshoot that and guess. You know, this is one of the shorter ones. This is going to go from the battery to the firewall or to the fender here. And you can kind of work your way through all these wires based on their lengths and the lug sizes and figure it out. So before I get on with the install, I want to cover why I decided to buy from K-Suspension instead of building my own cables. While doing my research, I found a lot of good write-ups and information online about building your own cables, and I priced it out, and it was actually a little more expensive to build them than it was to buy the one from K Suspension and have it already done. I feel like my time's worth something, so now I don't need to worry about my connections being good because he guarantees his connections, and he's using the right tools. If I would have bought all this stuff, I would have bought tools, but I would have been over the price of just buying it from him. This helps out a small business. I'm an Idaho guy. He's down in southern Idaho, so that helps him out too. And now I don't have to worry about it. So ultimately it was cost and knowing I'm getting a quality product. So with that in mind, we're gonna go ahead and get on with the install of this. So part of having a better battery connection should be that the Jeep starts a little bit quicker. And I've had that happen before with corroded ends, either, not allowing the vehicle to start at all or causing long cranks. And I've been having a long crank issue at this Jeep. I do suspect that it might be the fuel pump going out, but we're gonna do this test anyway and see if it makes any improvement. So I'm gonna try to press the start button as soon as I turn the key, and we'll do this 3 times before and then 3 times after and see if we can get any data. See that well? So it looked to me like 0.6, 0.8 seconds to start, which pretty quick really. I've had a few mornings, it's been cold lately, where it's cranked for a little bit longer. Anyway, I really don't need the improvement, but if I get one, that's cool too. And then also you're supposed to get an improved speed on your windows, on your window cranks. So there's the before on that one. Pretty slow, isn't it? So the first step is going to be to go ahead and get this battery out of the way. You can probably install this with the battery in place, but it's going to make it a little bit easier to move it and have a little bit more room. So I'm going to undo all my connections. So that's the negative to my winch. Push that out of the way. Just need to loosen this side up. And see, I've had this problem before. One of the reasons why I wanted to upgrade the connectors was these wires, they pull right out, and then hopefully that's focusing. Look at that. That corrosion. Just the bad colors. And I've had rigs before that just weren't starting well, and this was why. So now I'm going to go ahead and pull off all these connections and pull the battery out. All right, I've decided to start with the block to firewall. And this one's going to be obvious because the lug size is so big. This is the one that was missing the marker on the other side. But I'm pretty confident this is where it goes based off that lug size. The bolt, if you can see it, you have to pull this loom of wire forward. Right there. On the back of the firewall. You can just see it barely sticking out there. It's the last one on this valve cover. If you're having trouble, this is the ground that you're looking at. You can just follow that down. So, sorry for the sniffles. Like I said, it's pretty cold out. And you can see that stud sticking up there. As far as I can tell, it is a 11/16. And I have a deep socket on a swivel on an extension. Well, I broke it loose. You can't see it behind the wire loom. There you go. So that's gonna be kind of tricky to get to that. Makes it even more tricky when you're on a lifted Jeep. And I'm standing on a box that doesn't want to stay put. Anyway, you get the idea. So once you have that nut off that stud, you can come up here to this top one and realize you had the wrong size the whole time. No, that stud is, or that nut down there on that stud is an 11/16. This one's a different size. So a 5/8 will take off this upper side. I'm really glad I didn't film me taking off that lower side, because we would have been here all night and I would have ran out of battery. So with that ground off, we can compare them. They're roughly the same length. Lug size is the same. So toss that old one out of the way. We'll go ahead and stick that new one on. Super flexible wire, so you should be able to get it down in there pretty easy. I'm not sure. The old one ran behind this wire loom, but it feels kind of like a pinch point. I think I'm going to run it over the top. We'll see how that goes. Push it down there, slide it over the stud, run that nut down, hook up this top one, and you're done on this side. All right, so that one's on. Got it snugged up on both sides. I did end up having to run it behind the wire loom, just because coming over the top put too much of an angle on the wire here. I think I'm going to come through later and put some of this plastic loom covering over the top of this, just because I know that pinch in the firewall there is pretty sharp, obviously. So anyway, that one's done. Let's move on. So now we're going to do the fender to battery. It's funny, I was looking at this card and there's a white one on there, but I kept skipping over it because the page is white. I wasn't reading the words. So we got white, blue battery, white fender. Come over and it matches up to this one pretty good. This is a 10mm. We'll go ahead and unscrew that. So let's just compare these two wires for a second. Put it on the bench so you can get a better look. Look at that. That is unbelievable. Just look how small of a gauge of wire this is and how crummy it looks. These are fine strand aluminum in here. These look thicker than what I assume these are. Anyway, get that on there nice and snug without stripping it out, so it's tight. Leave that wire on there and then it will wrap around and hook onto the new battery connectors. There's one more ground wire. It runs from the battery. Now you have this big mess of wires here. That's for my winch. And probably the easiest way to do this is gonna be to try to trace these. don't know if you can even see what I'm doing. I'm going to cut open this wire loom here. I'm going to fish that ground wire out. So I had my colors mixed up. They're kind of hard to tell the difference on that sheet a little bit. This is red, not copper. So this side goes to the block, this side goes to the battery. That's where trying to trace those wires comes in handy, because this is the wire I'm after. And after I pulled it out of that big wire loom, which, you know, I'll go through and cover all that again when I'm done. But anyway, that one runs to that stud right there, if you can see what I'm pointing at. It's right in front of the engine mount. And it looks like it's a 13 millimeter. So I'm going to pull that off, hook up this battery. So now I got the block to battery wire on. I'm just going to set it aside now. Once I get all of the wires in, I'll be able to move them around a little bit to get them exactly how I want them ran. But now it's time to move on to the power distribution center stuff. This was I think I had a 13 on there as well. And this is your PDC, this box right here. So I already have, this is the wire that runs over to my fuse panel for all my accessories. So the first wire on here is your PDC to battery. And then you have your PDC to alternator that runs down there. So let's grab the PDC to battery. PDCs are the yellow, battery is blue. So that one's gonna sit on there for that. So this green wire that came off the PDC has an inline fuse apparently on it that goes down to the alternator. So you're actually replacing this with two batteries. One is yellow, and this goes from the PDC. Stick that on there so I don't forget. This one will run from the PDC to your A&L fuse holder, and then the pinks are for the fuse holder, and then the other side's going to run down to the alternator. And I believe that's a 10 millimeter down there. It had a little black plastic cover on it that I already popped off. Just, oops. The little black cover easily popped off by hand. You can see that's the cover. Okay. All right. Well, I'm not seeing the fuse on there that they're talking about, unless maybe it's inside this, whatever that is. See, the copper one runs down to that stud now. I need to decide man, it looks like I got a mess going in here. I need to decide where I'm going to put that fuse holder. So this one runs down. Okay. And it hooks to the alternator. I had that nut for it sitting right there, and now it's gone. I had to pull out my coolant overflow reservoir, and sure enough, it was stuck underneath there. Anyway, I'd like to blame it, you know, my little mistakes on being cold and tired, but no, that's just pretty much how it always goes when I'm working on something. Lots and lots of little mistakes. I was just in Harbor Freight the other day and I saw some of those magnetic trays and I was like, you know, I should really grab one of those. They're only like $2, but I didn't. Anyway, I'll snug that down. I'm gonna run the wire around the coolant overflow, around the PDC, and over to here, and I think I'll mount that A&L fuse right here. So I'm gonna put that overflow bottle back and then get to that. So after looking around in the engine bay, it looks like a good spot for that A&L fuse is going to be right here on top of the plastic cover for the fuse relay box. So I drilled a pilot hole over there. My only concern is that these will stick down far enough to hit some of the fuses in there. So it's been a few days since I've been working on this battery cable install. As I said earlier in the video, it was 26 degrees. I finally got pretty cold and my battery was about ready to die in the camera. So I decided to go inside, woke up the next morning with a cold. So I haven't had a chance to work on it since. Finally back at it. Where I left off, I was looking for a spot to put that A&L fuse. And it looks like a good spot's gonna be right on top of the fuse box. Anyway, so I have the cover over here, and I had started drilling it into place. The screw stuck out through the bottom. I didn't like that, so I stopped at the store and I picked up some of this Gorilla mounting tape. It says 30 pounds, so that should definitely hold this little fuse box down. I guess I'll just try to stick it on here the best I can. I don't think there's going to be much movement right there. So if it does start to unstick, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. You know, I could probably do a lot better job of prepping this, but it's starting to get to the point where I'm crunched on time. So I'm actually going to take off and we're going to go snow wheeling tomorrow. And I've been lollygagging all day on getting this done, so now I got to rush through it. Now putting this on, I want to orient it that way if I have to change the fuse, it pops out towards the firewall, or the side of the Jeep, I mean, the fender well, because on this side of it, so this clip goes towards the fender, and then on this side of the box there is the overflow bottle. So I'm going to stick it like that. That way if I have to change the fuse, there's room to get that fuse out. And I'm just going to stick it right on the edge of the box. All right, and then we have the starter wire. Then the other side of that is the PDC wire. Anyway, I'm going to tighten that down, put the cover on it. Got to tighten down the PDC. Slip my fuse for my fuse relay panel over there, in there. And then we have just one more wire to install. All right, finally on our last wire. This one runs from the battery down to the starter. And you're definitely going to want to make sure, if any of them have these covers on it, you want it to be this one. So I stopped and grabbed some of these covers from Napa. So blue is the battery side. I'm just going to go ahead and slide this on now. And tucked in with the factory wire is another little wire that runs down there. I believe it's the trigger wire or something like that. So you're going to want to make sure that that one is also included and protected in this wire loom. And here's the old wire. It runs down, and then if you see, it looks like a brown wire to me. It comes out of this other little loom, and it tucks down with it. And on the underside there, I'll show you in a second, is a little metal bracket clip type deal that this hooks into. And that's to help it from sliding around, I guess. So I'm gonna go ahead and run this down now. Just follow the same route as the original one. So in case you don't know, this is your starter, and this must be the trigger wire. This is the one that feeds into that same loom. This bolt right here is the one we're going to undo and replace. And pull off all that old loom because I'm replacing it. It's 14 millimeter. Got all sorts of crusties falling in my face. Go ahead and get that wire out of the way. Here's the new one. It's gonna be a lot easier if you have two hands. But I had to twist that around until I could get it in the right spot. Luckily there's plenty of extra wire length on these that he cuts, so it allows for some movement. Go ahead and tighten it down. And then I'm going to set the camera down for this part, but I'm going to take this other wire, I'm going to fish it into the loom, and then I'm going to put it back in this little metal bracket, and you can just see that it tabs and clicks into place. Alright, so just to recap, we ran a new ground wire from the head of the Jeep to the firewall. We ran a ground wire from the fender of the Jeep that will connect to the battery. We ran a ground wire that will go from the battery to the block of the Jeep down in there. We have a wire that goes from the battery to the PDC, from the PDC to a A&L fuse, from the fuse down to the alternator. I've gone through now and wrapped everything with this wire insulation, or whatever you want to call that. And then we have a power wire that runs from the battery down to the starter. So now the next step is to go ahead and throw the battery in, get it all hooked up, and then test it out, see if it made a difference. So to top it off, we have our new connections. They're labeled. Again, these aren't from K Suspension, but they're really similar to what he does offer. And the nice thing about these is they tighten down, and you don't have to undo the connection to put on your wires. So in other words, the clamp that holds it to the battery is separate from the bolt that holds your wires on to the connector. To the connector. So we'll just go ahead and tighten those down. Now we'll hook up all of our connections. So I'll start with the ground side. Oh, I was worried about that. So the lugs provided by Rafi on the wires are the right size, but the one for my winch cables is not. So I'm gonna have to drill those out real quick. All right, now that those are drilled out, next thing I need to do is get a better hold down bracket for the battery. Oh, shoot. Can't get that one out because of that. I think I have some scrap metal, so I'm gonna build one of those before I call it quits today. It'll just be a piece of flat metal that goes across. And then all of our power wires. And I think we just have the one that goes down to the starter. And the one that goes to the PDC. And that looks really good. I still got to tighten it down, of course. When I do, I'll make sure the wires are where I want them. That looks really good. There's the cover on the PDC, the A&L fuse. So, all right, I'm gonna tighten those down and we'll give it a test. All right, here's the real test. Are the windows any faster? Nope. About the same. Shoot. All right, I got you pointed at the stopwatch again. And let's see if it makes a difference. Now, I can already tell you, I fired it up once just because I had been running stuff off that battery without it connected to the Jeep. And I wanted to make sure that it still had juice in it. And it definitely felt like it fired up quicker, but let's run the numbers and see. Well, I'm not sure that it made anything faster, but that wasn't really the purpose. I wanted to upgrade the battery wires just because I was putting new connections on the battery itself. Figured it was the time. It is a really reasonable product. I think it was 110 or 114 shipped to my door. It helps out a small local business, and it definitely makes the engine bay look better. Just the connections are so much better. Let me throw one of these up there. I mean, this is what we were talking about before. This is what we were looking at. Just a mess of wires. Definitely looks better, and I think it's going to work better. And if the factory wires lasted 100,000 miles and had no issues, then these are going to last the rest of my life, I'm sure. And now I'll be able to add that 136 amp alternator that I want and be able to run all my accessories without having to worry about it. And I definitely did have a problem before, really having to watch my duty cycle and be careful. Now with the AGM battery and an upgraded alternator, upgraded cables to allow that current to flow, that would definitely make things a little bit better at least. So anyway, I hope this install helped you in some way. If you are looking at battery cables, definitely consider K Suspension. His customer service is top notch. He got it here super quick, and it's just a quality product. He does a really good job. So anyway, thanks for watching the video, and I'll catch you next time.